I wish Burnett's had been around when I was a grad student. I lived on $10,000 a year back then, and I needed a good sewing machine because my $15 special garage sale machine, it didn't cut it. So I waited, and eventually I ended up with a Bernina, but it took longer. I wish I'd had a good machine sooner. It would have shortened my learning curve. And we're going to talk about that today. What are the features and why it's important to have a good machine from the get-go, because your skills grow from there. And also when I joined Bernina, and now I've been at Bernina, it'll be 25 years in January. So I usually joke that I'm a Bernina snob. I'm spoiled. I work with top-of-the-line Bernina machines every day. But I was in charge of helping launch the Burnett 70 series especially. And I fell in love with those machines. That's the kind of machine I wish I'd had way, way back. And my nickname here is kind of Captain Burnett, because I work with them on an ongoing basis. And even though I'm spoiled working on Bernina machines, I just did a video that we do a series from, and I did it on the Burnett this time. And it was like going back to, that first time you met and you really fell in love with that machine. It was fun to bring all those memories back. So my first project when I joined Bernina was to basically do a guidebook, what we call a mastery workbook, where you could do exercises to learn your machine. And it was for the Burnetts of then. Now, my baby's all grown up. They've come a long way. So that being said, let me give you basically a roundup of key features to look for if you're looking for either your first good sewing machine, you want something that's affordable, and you want the features that will be there for you today, and some room to grow. Now, when I say affordable, we know that Berninas come with a price point. They're built to a high grade, they're Swiss engineered, they're not inexpensive. You get what you pay for, but they are not inexpensive. And Berninas always want, with the Burnett line, Burnett, by the way, is the name that was coined between Bernina and the name of the mother of the current chairman of the company when he started the brand Burnett. It was Bernina and Odette, the name of his mother, and the two together became Burnett. So symbolically, that meant we want the Bernina quality to be in there, but the mission of the brand is to basically make machines that are more affordable, available, with a high-end set of features and very good quality. So, and the brand Burnett delivers on that. So when Bernina wanted to go above, your basic mechanical machines with 20 stitches and stuff like that, they said, okay, we can go electronic, and that's kind of a step up. But what if you want embroidery, or you want like a top-notch sewing machine with dual feed, bright light, big space, the contemporary standard for a sewing machine? Then the challenge was, okay, we need to put Bernina know-how with value hardware. And value, the word value is relative, right? It's not necessarily the most features for the money. It's not necessarily the cheapest price. It's this sweet spot where you get what you need at an affordable price. So Bernina went to work with a manufacturer. Burnett is made for Bernina, but Bernina worked very closely for the 70 series with the manufacturer, to the point where the layout that you see here, and if you work with a Bernina machine, you know this layout, the knobs, not common on this price range. This is going to be $9.99 on sale. It's basically in that range. That machine with these features is unheard of in that slice of the price bracket. A touchscreen in the center, the speed slide control here, all your key buttons here, all laid out like a Bernina, because the manufacturer designed this hardware platform just for Burnett. So this is not like a lot of junior brand machines is basically a sticker on the front made by somebody else, but it's the same machine. No, this is exclusively a Burnett. There is no other machine on the market that is like this. So that was important, which means the manufacturer worked very closely with Bernina, hand in hand, so that the hardware would deliver. We were making tweaks and refinements within a month of launching this platform because we wanted it to perform. And the manufacturer has been very good with Bernina to do that. And then all the Bernina know-how. The numbers are knocked off the 7 series Bernina. I would say in features, this is very close to, let's say, a midline of Bernina 5 series, and at a much more affordable price. People often ask, what's the difference? Well, you get a jumbo bobbin, you get a conventional bobbin, but it's a drop-in bobbin, which means it's easy to put in, and it's easy to see how much thread you have left. So there are still advantages, and within that price range, you get the feature. So talking of features, let me jump in and show you what some of the key features are on this. One of the, and I saw the spreadsheets when these machines were being developed. I saw the spreadsheets of all the features that went in, and they were color coded. If it was green, it was that this machine and its sisters are at the top of their class. If it was yellow, it was they were at par with the top of their class. And across the entire set of features, whether it's speed, number of stitches, the size, the lighting, the dual feed, all of that. There's three machines in this range. The 77 is the sewing only machine, and it is so well rounded. It was at the top of its class, of a price point range, if you want, on the market. Nothing else touches that machine. It has top features across the board. So talking of, you have 9 inches to the right of the needle. That's big. That's above average for the class. You can tell the lighting is very bright. It's bleaching out my hand. That's the native lighting of the machine. You can dim it. If you work on lame, on shiny material, on dark fabrics like black, you can actually dim the light or even turn it off so that you don't get too much glare when you work. So that's all controllable. There is, for instance, here, you have a 7mm stitch width, which is standard, best of class for a drop-in bobbin machine. You have dual feed. This machine has dual feed built in, the Burnett dual feed. And so and the default foot uses it. So the traction on your fabric, the transport of your fabric is optimum every time you sew. There's a range of feet included with it. And several of them include dual feet. And there are optional feet available also if you venture, and because when you have a good machine, you can tackle projects, you can actually add additional presser feet later. Needle threader is built in. And actually, if you saw the presser foot go down when I did this, this machine raises the foot on its own. And when you start sewing, you just step on the gas, it will drop the foot and start sewing. So all those little, I want to call them distractions, manipulations that we used to have to do, like go in the bag, drop the foot, reposition the hands on the fabric, check out, maybe lift the foot, adjust a little more. Nowadays, you don't have to do any of this. You position with your 2 hands. There's a free hand system here. When you push the bar, it will lift the foot. So if I push the bar, you can tell the foot went up. And then when you put it down, you start sewing, you're in business. So your focus is on the sewing and not all these little things that take time and attention away from sewing. And I don't know about you, but when my typical time for sewing would be in the evening after work, after dinner, after, back then when I was in grad school, when my son, my baby son was going to sleep. So I was tired when I started sewing. So if I could focus on my project instead of all these little extra things, I would get more done for the same amount of time I have to sew. So that's all built in. So the freehand system is there. And if you leave the foot up, when you step on the gas, it will drop and you can start sewing. And it will save you time. Another thing that will save you time is that it sews up to 1,000 stitches a minute. That's at the top. That's high end for that, the value market, as we call it, for this price point of a machine. That is actually a fast machine. And I tried samples this morning. I even tried a quilt sandwich. I was having fun making the stitches smaller, bigger, faster, slower. And I was not able to get a single pucker, and I was not able to get a single stitch not balanced. It looks as good on the back as it did on the front. It's your standard cotton low loft batting with 2 layers of quilting cotton. And every stitch, there's even triple stitches in there. They all came out impeccable. And again, remember, I'm a Bernina snob. I work on top of the line Berninas that cost way, way more. So I'm used to impeccable stitching. So I'm picky when it comes to my stitching. And the one thing that made me fall in love with these machines is that I even tried, this is your cotton, 16 layers I did this morning. I recounted because I thought maybe it's not, but it's 16 layers of cotton. So if you want to do a tote bag, this will do. And the machine went through it with a triple stitch. Any stitch you want to throw at it, it went just through it like it was butter. So the power is there, the speed is there, the bright light. So your working environment is set up for you. Now, on the front, you have the touchscreen, and this is where this machine really shines. Based on the Bernina user interface, therefore, it inherited the interface know-how of Bernina, where we have, on all of our machines, we have, when we have a touchscreen, it's centrally located. So when you're working, you just look up, and you can glance up and see verify your settings. You're not looking away from your project, so your attention stays focused. And then you're back to sewing faster that way because you didn't have to turn your head even. It's all up here. This interface is the Bernina interface. So if you've used a Bernina before and you need a second machine, for instance, and you say, well, I don't need to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a second machine that I will take to the cabin or on trips or retreats, this will have the features built in because they came in from the Bernina world. The Bernina user interface is baked into this. The hardware platform is what allows us to make the price point more affordable, but the know-how is already on Bernina, so we were able to graft it in here. The knobs, very intuitive. I grew up with a stereo. I know how to crank up the stereo, right? So if you want to rotate something, you want to enlarge the stitch and all that, it's all easy. You turn the knob, you crank up or you crank down. Couldn't be easier, right? And when you change something on the screen, just like on a Bernina, it turns yellow. So that visual interface tells you what's happening and what you did, so that you, at a glance, you can quickly tell what you've done and whether you need to do something else. And something unique that is not found even on high-end brands. Only Bernina does this. Every stitch in here, if the stitch is, let's say, half the width of your maximum stitch width, or even if it's a triple stitch, for instance, you can move the needle position. So instead of moving the fabric this and that way, you can say, no, let's line up the fabric with the toe of the foot. That's easy to track. Then I don't have to do extra work. Let the machine move the stitch where I want it instead. And that's a feature inherited thanks to the Bernina user interface, and it remembers everything. So when you work with this, if you change anything, it will turn yellow on the screen. You'll know what you did. And then you can go to another stitch, do the same thing. When you come back to a stitch, so let's say you did a straight stitch, you're doing applique tonight, you're doing a blanket stitch, you changed it, it started at a certain size. I like applique, like small applique at too wide by too long. That's nice and easy, set that up. If I go do a straight stitch on something else, if I go back to my applique stitch, it remembers what I did to it, so I don't have to. We call it the altered stitch memory. It's the most beautiful feature with the longest name, but basically it tracks the tweaks, the details, so that you don't have to. That also is inherited from Bernina. Not only it's not available on high-end brands, it's not available in this product category at all. So the Burnett really, really blazes a trail there. So you have ergonomics up front. You can send the needle down with just a button. You have a securing function. You can control your speed here, including when you wind a bobbin. You can control the speed of winding of your bobbin. Everything is covered nice and easy at your fingertips. There's a thread cutter built in. So you sew, you cut, you go back, you do it again, right? You don't spend time looking for the thread snips and cutting and then, put that down and then go back and do the next thing. You just focus on the two pieces of fabric you're going to put under and go with it. So efficiency and productivity time, guaranteed. Now, it comes well equipped with a bunch of press feet, even a second spindle for double needlework if you need to, and everything fits in the accessory box. All you have to do is put it in. Whoops. Normally I sit in front of my machine. So you put that in, it goes with, and if you take the box off, you have your free arm. And then let me show you, there is, I won't jam myself in the ribs, but there is an extension table. It's height adjustable, so if your table is not level, you can make sure the table will be level with it. But when you put that in there, it will attach to the machine. It will attach to the machine firmly so that when it's in, it is not budging off the machine. A lot of in this product category, this price category, a lot of tables just slide and park next to the machine. And if you're not careful, they slide away. This is adjustable and firmly latched into the machine so that you don't have to worry about this shifting around when you do a big project. I just did a video to do a patching. It was a tutorial on patching a tear in a duvet cover, a big tear, how to put a patch instead. So seal that with stitches and all that. I was able to manipulate the big duvet cover around this table, no problem. It was super easy. When it's on, you need to really pull to take it off. It is not going to slide away by mistake. And then you can laugh. Now there are 4 legs when you're on a full table. This will be completely stable. So that's for the extension table. You can drop the feed dog. You need to do some mending or some free motion work. You can actually do this there. You just take that off, and it's all done in one bit. So super easy, well lit, ergonomic. From threading the needle to sewing, it's really no time at all. Now let me show you under the hood here. The thread path is pretty conventional. You wind your bobbins here. When you engage the bobbin winder, the machine will know. And then you can control the speed of winding up here. So if a thread is prone to stretching, let's say monofilament, you can actually slow down the winder. And if it's like good old embroidery thread or cotton thread, you can go a little faster and wind that bobbin. And then you just put it in. There's a stylus included. So when you want to do, if you want to do some, some work with a stylus, you can. But the touchscreen works just fine with your finger. Personally, I prefer the finger. It's more direct for my brain, so I just touch what I need. The beauty of a touchscreen interface like this is that you see the stitch, you touch the stitch, you get the stitch. Then a couple of tweaks, you're in business, you're ready to sew. Meanwhile, you didn't let go of your fabric while you were there, and you could lift the foot with a freehand system bar. Or if the foot was already up, let me bring the foot up here. By the time you step on the gas, this foot would go down and start sewing. So it's a fraction of the time to get ready, and 90% of your time is spent on the project, on the sewing, what you really want to do with the machine. So that is basically the scoop for the 77. It's super well-rounded. For this kind of price point, you are getting the top-end features across the category. So you're getting maximum value for your money. There's even thread cutters built in underneath here. There's one on the side here, and it will hold the threads. And when you cut, it will hold the threads until you resume sewing. Again, a time saver. You don't have to hunt your threads down if you want to cut them externally. When we do decorative work, it's nice to keep the threads out so that you can control them better. So there's two options here for cutting, underneath or on the top. So that's for the Burnett 77. In terms of sewing, it is really at the top of its class. I fell in love with this. I made a couple of projects on it, and it's, coming from the Bernina world, I was always wondering, am I going to miss this or that feature? And really, I didn't, because the Bernina user interface baked those features, that usability right into the machine. And I was very, very impressed. So I fell in love with the B70 series. It is really, really a sweet spot, and it does everything. I wished I'd had something like this when I was a graduate student. My mother, little anecdote, I had made a garment on my old machine, and she saw that, and the old machine couldn't do very well. And then when I finally got a good machine, she, people who sew, they do this, but she flipped the garment right side out, and she looked at the finish inside, and she says, "Wow, your workmanship has improved." And my answer was, my machine has improved. Once you have a good machine, you can trust that it will do what you want. There are overcasting stitches in here. You can overcast the edge. You could do a lot of things. Basically, a whole garment, a whole tote bag. All the tools and the stitches that you need to do this are built in. And before we wrap up the 77, talking of the stitches, there are 500 stitches so far built into this machine, and they're organized in tabs. So I'm on the practical stitches right now. That's your straight stitch, your zigzag, your triple stitch. You want to reinforce something, right? Then we have decorative stitches. So you want to do something pretty, decorative stitches. There's even alphabets. You could write quilt labels if you need to write. My mother used to write tags on the children's clothes when they went to school, so they would come back, right? So you can actually do your alphabets. There's script, block, and double block. So pretty basic, pretty standard. There's well over a dozen, there's, I believe, 17 buttonholes in there. So whether you're doing a knit buttonhole, a shirt, a blouse, pair of pants, heirloom buttonholes, they all came from Bernina land. So the variety is there. There are 2 eyelets that you can sew. Those can be very convenient. And there's a button sew-on program. 80+% of the buttons on the market have the same spacing between the holes. So the program is built into that. You put the button on. There's even a press-a-foot with the rubber toes that will hold down the button. You just drop the feed dogs, and then you can sew your buttons even with the machine. And when you make a garment, I started making shirts when I started sewing. You make a garment, the last step between making and wearing is the buttonholes, right? And the buttons. So I bought my first good machine because my old one could not do decent buttonholes at all. So this takes care of that last step for you. So you have a wide variety of buttonholes. There's a quilting menu, again, courtesy of Bernina. Bernina is well known in the quilting world. So you have feather stitches in there, piecing stitches. You have a bit of everything. So, and I played with some this morning. I had a lot of fun with that. And then there's even a personal program. So this, again, courtesy of Bernina user interface. You do a stitch. I mentioned my applique stitch. I like the 2 mm wide by 2 long for small appliques, right? If you do this all the time, you don't want to change that stitch every time you turn on the machine when you want to do applique. You can just tweak it once, move the needle position over. If you change anything on it, then save it. The machine will remember all those changes for you. So when you turn on the machine, next week, next month, you want to do an applique, you just retrieve that stitch. It's all pre-programmed for you. It's yours. You get to sew it. You don't have to waste time resetting the machine to do what you've done before. It remembered it for you. You can just save that in your personal program. So very, very useful features. The rest, you have a bunch of setup options. You can customize this machine to work the way you would like to. There's a creative consultant, buttonholes. First time you do buttonhole on a silk, it's expensive material. You don't want to mess it up, right? So you can go in there and say, I have a fine woven. I want to do a buttonhole. What should I do? It will tell you, use a fine needle. It will select the blouse, the delicate buttonhole for you. It will set it up. It will recommend if you should use a stabilizer or not. And then when you say go, it puts up the stitch and you are ready. You just need to measure the length of the buttonhole. And that is done automatically for you, because when you put the button on what we call the slave foot, the buttonhole foot, when you put the button on here, there's a little lever you pull down. It will make the buttonhole exactly to the length of your button with a little allowance for the thickness. So you are good to go. Again, from making the garment to wearing it, that last step is not going to be long because the convenience is built in there. Again, the Bernina brains with the value hardware is what took those two impossible things and made them one. So now you get the benefit of it. So that is for the Bernette 77.